Welcome back to the South Florida Mortgage Report. It's your hat dude wearing mortgage guy, always joined with Craig A. Garcia, president of Capital Partners Mortgage. And we've got a special guest this morning, and we're going to talk about some really interesting need-to-know information that's been in the news. There are big changes coming. So we have Raul Molina with us. He is the president of Home Partners Title. Home Partners Title is the largest title company in South Florida, actually. Raul's been with them for 11 years, been in the business since 2001. And on top of that, of course, he's got the same hairstyle as I do. But on top of that, he is a South Florida native as well, just like Craig and I. So it's really look forward to having you on, Raul. Thank you for coming on to join us this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. We go to the same barber, so we're good.
Yes, absolutely.
So Raul, we're really excited to have you here. And so, let's dive in. So we're talking about FinCEN and FinCEN changes and in real estate transactions.
Yeah.
If somebody ignores these FinCEN changes, what actually happens?
I wish I could ignore it, but they can be in some trouble with the federal government. It is a federal regulation. And now with these new requirements, it's actually mandatory that the title company be the one to submit the answers to the questions that are required by law. So it is required now, and they are legally responsible for doing it. The title companies are. Yeah, we won't be closing without being in compliance with that.
And has this started already? Are closings already being affected or not yet?
Actually, yes. So when you take a look at it, it says the deadline is March 1st is when it begins, but it's not necessarily files that are closing after March 1st. It could be files that are already closing today or last week, but the warranty deed is going to be recorded after March 1st. So we don't want to take that risk. We've already started doing that so that when the warranty deed gets recorded, if after March 1st, we're already in compliance.
And okay, and who feels it first? I mean, is it the investor, that's the agent, the lender, probably not the lender or the title company?
Right. So that's a great question, Craig, because the tip of the spear here is actually the real estate agent. They're the ones that know their client, and they play a huge role in this. Although they're not the ones legally responsible for collecting the information and submitting it to the federal government, they play a key role when it comes to telling the title company and setting the expectations when there is a customer that is looking to purchase cash and they're looking to take ownership in the name of an entity. And that could be a corporation, an LLC, or a trust. So the realtor has firsthand knowledge of these things coming up. And the sooner they tell the title company, the better, because that way we could set the expectations up front and get these questions out to them as quick as possible. Because it is extensive, in some cases over 100 questions. And like I said, if we don't have all the answers to those questions by the time that we are closing, we're not closing until we have that in compliance.
And so for those that don't know, so what is the exact new requirement?
So what they're doing now is, as opposed to before March 1st, is they're expanding the requirements significantly. Before, it was limited to certain areas, the county, Broward, then they extended it to Palm Beach, and so on and so forth. After March 1st, it's nationwide, regardless of where the property is located, regardless of the county or anything like that. It's required now. So it's 50 states nationwide. The other thing is that they're eliminating the threshold. They're eliminating the threshold, which was $300,000. It was a threshold that basically required the property to be looked at, and the purchase price that was over $300,000 was required to obtain compliance. If it was under $300,000, it did not require that. So now that is required regardless of the price. The other thing that they're doing is that they're expanding the entities. So before it was inconsistent if it was a trust. Now, definitely, if it's a trust, the entity is a trust, it also requires it to be collected. And not only that, but they're expanding the information that they want from the trust. It's not just limited to the trustees. Now they're looking for beneficiary information. They're looking for anyone that has the power within the trust to amend the trust. So that's expanding as well. And as far as the other entities are concerned, LLCs or corporations, they're expanding it to anyone that is in that entity, that's named in that entity, that has 25% control or more of the entity. So it's not just the main managers of the LLC or the president or vice president of the corporation. Any managers or officers that have at least 25% or more percent of control, that information needs to be put in there. So a lot of questions. And now we're also required to ask questions of the seller as well, not just the buyer.
Of the seller. And the seller doesn't have to be an LLC or a trust. It
Right.
can just be a person.
Right. So the buyer is the one that determines whether FinCEN is required or not. And if it is required, the seller in that situation gets dragged in. So yeah.
So what kind of information does the seller need to divulge on a deal like this that they wouldn't normally?
So they have to provide information like social security number, unfortunately. They have to provide personal information like their email, their contact information, things like that. They don't really have to report anything, obviously, as financial because they're not the ones making the purchase, but there is personal information that is requested.
And it's interesting. So this is going to be cash deals, finance deals, both.
Well, it's mainly cash deals.
Okay.
It's not that's not the determining factor. The determining factor is if it's not a traditional financed deal. So if it's a private loan, if it's not going through the regular traditional fraud detection and money laundering detection processes that a CD or a traditional loan requires, then it's considered meeting FinCEN requirements.
So if we're doing loans and the buyer is an LLC and they're getting one of these DSCR loans, maybe we're not needing to verify as much income as normal. Is that gonna be a transaction that would be triggered for this? For
Yes, it very well may be. There is a list of exceptions that we have. We have basically a checklist when we receive the file that takes us through a workflow and tells us if yes, then continue, and then it goes through the exceptions. There are certain exceptions that will not require FinCEN, but if at the end of the workflow, everything lines up with yes, then FinCEN is required. Not being financed is definitely one of those requirements that trigger FinCEN, but also certain loans will trigger it if they're not traditional loans.
Okay, but a traditional loan where the buyer is just wanting to put their home in the name of their trust, they're getting a regular Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan. Is it?
Right. If it's a traditional
Yeah,
loan, it's then it exempts them from FinCEN. It also exempts them from FinCEN if it's their own name, right? It's only when it's in an entity that there's no traditional loan that it triggers FinCEN.
got it. So Craig Garcia buying in the name of the Craig Garcia Trust, probably on a regular loan, it's not gonna trigger this.
Craig Garcia is an individual. If you're
Right.
purchasing in the Craig Garcia Trust, then it will, and if it's cash.
And if it's cash. Okay. All right. I understand. And so where do you see this causing problems first?
Well, I could tell you from our experience in title, the first problems that we see are with the buyers and now sellers not being prepared ahead of time or for the expectation set, and they hear about it for the first time from us when we're sending them the list of questions that we need to know answers to. And that a lot of times we get a lot of pushback from the buyers and sellers because they are personal questions and they are extensive. So they get a little grumpy when it comes to having to sign to answer those questions. So that's the problem that we see. If the expectation is set by the agent early on and they're told, hey, you're going to get these questions. It's the law. It's in the contract as well. It's going to be in the contract soon.
Okay.
The new updates for the contract, then they will be a little bit more susceptible to complying when we send them the questions. But if they're hearing it from us for the first time, then that's when the pushback comes. And then they're going to want to speak to their agent. And then delayed is what's going to cause the problems. At the end of the day, it causes delays, and delays are not our friend when it comes to closing on time.
You have a sense for how much time it could get added if it's handled right?
If it's handled right, it only takes, a few minutes to answer all those questions.
Yes.
It only, takes a few minutes to answer those questions. But if they give pushback and they delay it, it's as long as they delay it for. It's all up to the buyers and the sellers on how quickly they answer the questions. Now, I understand some of those questions they won't know off the bat, right? They'll have to look into their trust or their LLCs to answer some of those questions, but it still can be done definitely before there's any threat to the closing not taking place.
Got it. And Bill, you want to?
Yeah, I guess this is all kind of new and everything, and we don't hear about it too often. I know South Florida, especially, man. Matter of fact, there was an article come out this week in the paper. I think South Florida leads the nation in cash deals. I think it's like 47%. It's
Yeah.
nearly half the transactions are cash. So cash, I guess that's why I kind of, everything starts in South Florida, then eventually goes nationwide. So I know the realtors, most of our target audience here is the real estate agents, our partners we work with. And I'm sure their question is like, what's the most common question that those realtors are asking you guys right now about all these changes? What's on their top of their mind?
So the agents are very curious as to what the difference is, what's new, right? So explaining what's new, what's the difference between last year, or February 28th and March 1st is the fact that there's no threshold anymore for purchase price and that it's across the entire nation. So those are the two most important differences. So that's one of the questions they ask. They also ask, what do I need to do? They want to know if they're required to do anything. So the answer to that is no, they're not legally required to do anything in the interest of their customer, and in the interest of the transaction going smoothly. Their responsibility is to inform so that is a very important role in my opinion. It's not a requirement, but sharing that
Yeah, so are the investors, I mean, what are you hearing from investors? Is there confusion? Is there pushback? I mean, are people surprised at the anonymity, bananas, going away? Or what kind of pushback have you heard anything from investors about this?
Yes. So investors, there's a lot of confusion out there. Like with a lot of things that the federal government does, there's not clarity on everything. So investors are confused about vacant land, for example. So there are some talks that if the land is being purchased for the development of homes, then it can be subject to FinCEN. Now, another requirement is obviously that this is for 1 to 4 family residences, right? So anything that's above 4 wouldn't fall into FinCEN. So there's a lot of questions regarding the actual details from the investors as far as, if they're purchasing for development purposes, those kind of things. So that's really where we have a lot of questions that come from them. And we have a question and answer sheet. We also have our underwriters and underwriting counsels that we could present those questions to and get answers from them on whether investors investing in vacant land or multifamily units are also required to report FinCEN.
Do you think this is going to scare away clients or investors? Do you think it's going to freak the market out or anything?
I don't think so, unless they're laundering money. That's what it's for. But I don't think so. I think it's just another requirement that needs to be done as far as closing is concerned. And like I said, the questions really could be answered fairly quickly. The more they get used to it, the quicker they'll be able to answer those questions because once they know the answers already, it's just a matter of repeating it. It's the same questions. So it's the same data points that we need to collect on all transactions. Like the data points change. The dynamic of the transaction can maybe trigger additional questions, but the set of questions and the set of data points are there. They're the same across the board.
In our industry, there's always panic when there's change,
Yep.
like buyer broker agreement, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just curious, you probably haven't felt it yet, but are investors, they panicking about this? I mean, have we seen anything like people, any
Panicking,
negative reaction so far, anything?
I wouldn't say panicking. I would say that they're curious, and I would say mostly they're confused, right? Because like I said, there are still uncertainties out there. Um, and when you hear, oh, the federal government is requiring this, the first thing you think of is, well, am I going to get penalized if I do something wrong unintentionally? So I don't know the answer to that, but I highly doubt that there's going to be a penalty if you did something in good faith and there's unclarity, there's not clarity around it too much. They're probably just going to look to work with us to try and get the answers to the questions that they want, and then keep improving upon the requirements and bring more clarity into it. So just, those are the concerns really that investors have is, am I going to get fines for this or am I going to get fines for that? If you don't report, then definitely there in my opinion there's going to be more of a chance that there is some kind of repercussion. But if you answer something incorrectly in good faith, they'll probably work with us on that. But it still remains to be seen. I know that in the past, there was uncertainty also, but there wasn't a lot of the federal government going after people because they answer something incorrectly either, as long as they report and they did it in good faith. So I don't think that that's going to change moving forward either. It's just more data that's required.
Bro, how deep does the disclosure go if the ownership is like layered? Like you've got, they're buying in an LLC, which is owned by another LLC.
Yes, that's a good question because they're going to want to know if it's multiple layered corporations. They're going to want to know information about the companies, the parent companies, and stuff like that. So yes, it does go several layers.
So just putting an LLC layer in there doesn't get you out of it. They're going to go deeper.
Yeah.
You need the same information on the next
Right.
LLC.
Yep.
Up the chain.
Yeah. Yeah. They're gonna want to. They basically want the data points from the decision makers.
Got it. And if a
Anybody?
foreign national owns a U.S. LLC, what changes? Anything?
No, it's the LLC that triggers it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
we
the
know
entity that
we're in
triggers it.
South Florida. South Florida is a heavy investor foreign buyer market. So I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of
Yeah.
that. Do you think that's going to discourage foreign capital from coming here and investing?
I don't think so. I don't think it's gonna discourage capital coming in if they're intending to do it in a way that is verifiable. Like I said, if you're looking to launder money, yes, that's gonna hamper that. I think that honest investors that are looking to that could verify their entities and could verify their income, it's not going to hamper them. And it's only going to get easier moving forward because they'll just get used to what they need to report and they'll have it at hand. They'll have it readily available instead of having to dig for it every time.
Sure.
Gotcha.
And we are
So if I'm
cash deals as well. Like you saying, Bill, almost half of our deals are cash, just under half. So it does affect quite a few of our closings.
Yeah.
so Ralph, I'm a listing agent and an LLC offer comes in tomorrow. What should I verify before accepting?
Well, as an agent, you don't have to verify anything. You just need to let them know
Okay.
that they need to be prepared to answer questions about the LLC. So as long as you are prepare your customer for those questions, and we have a pamphlet that's going out that has links to more information from the vendor that we are using to help report these to the federal government portal. And it'll be good if the agents are aware of what type of questions they are so that they could really provide that anticipation to the customer so that they're ready to answer those questions or find the paperwork that they need to get the answers to those questions.
And is it fair to say that when people who are buying in an LLC, they're probably doing it because either they are doing it with other parties or they're doing it for risk or they're doing it for anonymity? Anonymity is basically now
It's out the window.
not a valid reason to put it in an LLC because you're going to have to disclose anyway
Right. Well, at least as far as anonymity is concerned with the federal
to the
government.
government.
Um, as
Yeah.
for the general public records, they'll still maintain that anonymity because it'll be recorded under the LLC, the public document. So they'll still maintain an aspect of that. But if they're trying to remain anonymous from the government, then that's definitely going to be a problem.
Excellent. Great.
Yeah. Um, so, as a lender, we're pre-qualifying this entity borrower. What's the one thing I should kind of confirm if there's one key piece, I guess, before saying, yeah, they're good to go?
That's a good question. So you're going to want to make sure that the individual is within the entity is properly authorized to make the decisions, right? And that they're reporting everyone else who has at least that you're aware of everyone else that has at least 25% decision making capability in that entity. So it's information is going to be needed from those individuals as well, not just the one that is coming to you for the loan.
Gotcha. Good stuff. Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, if you were advising serious investors long term, what adjustment would you make?
I would just tell them that it's in their best interest to look at the set of questions and the data points that are required, and in anticipation of a transaction, have those ready to report to the title company. And the title company is going to go ahead and once they get the contract, reach out to the buyer, and they're going to let them know that FinCEN is a requirement, and they're going to send them a questionnaire. The sooner they can fill out that questionnaire, the easier it is for them and the faster it is for the transaction to take place. So just have the answers to the questions ready is what I would suggest.
Great.
And did we kind of summarize, if you're a realtor, what's the one question you should ask before you sign the contract or the offer? I don't know if you can kind of summarize that. And
In regards to FinCEN,
yeah.
the one question I would ask is like I was telling Craig, are there any other individuals, other
Okay.
officers in the LLC that have 25% or more decision-making ability? Because they're going to need to present questions, answers to those questions. Sometimes you'll see that there's LLCs where there's the manager is here in the state of Florida or in the United States, but there are some members that are in other countries. And that can present more delays if they're not individuals that are accessible.
What about if they're less than 25% and they're in there?
If they're less than 25%, then the requirements that I'm aware of right now, you don't need to disclose that individual. But again, we're new to this as well. So because, it's starting March 1st, we'll definitely be seeking guidance from our underwriting counsels on an individual transactional basis as well. So it very well may be that for risk mitigation purposes, our underwriter will say, you know what, go ahead and get the information from this individual as well. And that might be, regarding that one transaction, not necessarily because the federal government requires it. It could be that the underwriter is saying, this is in the gray area enough that we probably want to, for, risk mitigation purposes, get this information.
So let me ask you, because you brought up, at the federal government, I know it's all new and everything, but I mean, do you think this is the beginning of a broader federal oversight in real estate overall? I mean, what's your synopsis of this?
I wouldn't say in general broader oversight over real estate. I think it's more, remember this, FinCEN is the financial crimes unit of the federal government. So they're really looking for financial crimes, money laundering, fraud, those kind of things. In that sense, yes, there probably is going to be there's going to be more of a radar on transactions, especially with the uncovering of all the fraud that we're seeing across the country. A lot of it was during the COVID days. But yes, so you're going to see it in that regard, not necessarily real estate in general. I think that we're moving more towards deregulation in real estate in general to make it easier for investments and stuff like that. But as far as the money is concerned, if it's cash, they want to have more knowledge about where that cash originated from and where the money is coming from and who has control over it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, do you think it's going to tighten further? I mean, it's all new, but I mean, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think that pretty much there may be more clarity that's added to it, but I don't think it's going to tighten further because really the information that they're asking for is pretty revealing as far as tracing the money is concerned. So I don't think that there's much more to go in the way of it getting tighter. I think that more clarity and be more specific as to what is needed I do see coming down the pike, but not necessarily expanding. It's already off 50 states. It's already off purchase prices. And it's already all pretty much all entities. It's LLCs, corporations, even trusts. The only thing I could see expanding beyond is maybe going into commercial properties. That's the only place where I could see it expanding to.
It's interesting because it started out with with actually bigger transactions, but just on residential. You would think, and now they've opened it up to the smaller ones. So that's interesting. Yeah, but I mean, if you want to launder more money, a commercial property would be a more efficient way to do it, I would think. But
I think they figure that it's harder to do it on a commercial property because of other ways of tracking the money. But I don't know. I think that's a good question, though. I think that's the only. I mean, that could be an area where it does expand into to the commercial. Anything over four family residents.
yeah,
Right.
anything else on this FinCEN topic that that agents or investors should know that we didn't hit on? Thank you for explaining everything so thoroughly.
Other than that, they really don't need to become the subject matter expert in FinCEN. They just need to know who the source is for their resource. So if they just contact their title company, they contact Home Partners Title, they contact their title rep or myself if they have any questions. That's really what they need to know. The most important is for them to be proactive, not to wait until we ask their customer for it and then their customer goes to them and then now they look like they didn't prepare their customer for the situation or that they didn't know about it. So that's the most
Yeah,
important part.
it sounds like the big message here is don't let your customer get blindsided by all this extra information they're going to need to provide.
Of course.
Exactly. Especially if they're first time purchasing, they're not going to know about this. It's not like it's all over the news or anything like that. Us in the real estate world, we know about it because we've been hearing about it from our underwriters and stuff like that. The average customer is not going to really know about that. And everyone, it's human nature to take a step back when you're asked for personal information that you can't really see why it's being asked for purchasing a property. So that
Especially in this day and age when there's so many fraud schemes
yeah,
going on and there's it seems like every day we get emails every day probably where somebody's trying to get your information.
right.
So you can understand the skepticism.
It's an invasive process buying a home. I mean, then again, if you buy in a condo or a homeowners association, they want all your information as well as in addition to all the stuff that we ask. It's a very invasive process. I think people have gotten used to it, but sometimes it does rattle some chains or feathers or whatnot. So, but it needs to happen. I mean, it's a requirement now, and the agents need to be aware of all these things. So,
Yeah.
good stuff.
And
Yeah.
I mean, the customers are used to maybe answering those questions about themselves, but now they're going to have to answer those questions about the beneficiaries in their trusts. A lot of times, those beneficiaries are their kids. It's like, why do you need information about my son or my daughter? Why do you need to know about them? I'm the trustee. I'm the one purchasing the property. So it can become a, a bit invasive, and it can become a situation where they're taken back by the nature of the questions for the individuals that are not themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's why the agents have you guys here. You know, you're going to help guide them along, help explain to them, and that's part of the service that Home Partners provides. And you guys are being proactive, and you want to train the agents, and you're here to support and to help explain because the agents, the realtors are on the front line. Us and mortgage and title and homeowners insurance or home inspectors. We're kind of supporting. Yeah, I would say that the agents, you're the captain of the ship. And we're here to support you. But and they have a lot of stuff going on. So all this information that we're bringing clarity to the agents to help to make it for a smooth transaction for everyone, for buyers, seller, agents, everyone, because we want everybody to have this is the biggest transaction of everybody's life. So you want to make it smooth. That's what we're here for, to provide information to our
Yeah.
partners.
And
Awesome.
that just actually brings something to mind to further answer Craig's question about what's the one thing that agents should really know, or was it Bill's question? I don't remember. But know the contract and what the contract says to FinCEN, because it's much easier for the agent to point to the contract and say, "Hey, it's in the contract, and this is what it
Right.
says," as
Right.
opposed to trying to convince them, well, they're good people. Don't worry. You could give them the answer to the questions. No, just point to the contract, know where it speaks to FinCEN, just like FERPTA. FERPTA's in the contract as well. So as long as the agent is able to tell their customer, look, you're under contract for this and it's required, then it's much easier for them to have that conversation as to opposed to just trying to convince them that, it's okay to give the information.
Absolutely. All right. Good stuff. Very, very informative. Craig, do you have any final thoughts or questions for Raul?
Well, Raul, you've done a fantastic job displaying your competency on this subject, and now we usually would like to give you an opportunity to let people know a little bit more about you. And so we usually will ask some of our guests when they come on. You get a lot of people that might see this that know you, but what's something that people that you know and see on a daily basis, work with on a regular basis, what's something they might be surprised to know that Raul likes to do in his free time, in his personal life? What would people be surprised about?
Okay, so I'm probably a year away from receiving a black belt in Aikido. It's a Japanese martial arts. Steven Seagal, anybody seen that?
I was going to say, isn't that Steven Seagal?
That's that's Aikido. I also like to paint. I like doing painting with oils, landscapes mainly. And then just the general stuff when you have young kids, I coach baseball, basketball, take the boys to their practices and their games, sometimes all day on Saturday.
Wow.
Doubleheader baseballs, morning basketball in the mornings, doubleheader baseball in the afternoon. So just very busy in that sense in the personal life.
You're a real renaissance man, Raul. I'm
Yeah.
impressed.
In addition to, we spoke earlier off camera, you're a man of faith as well, and
Yes,
you support your church, and
absolutely.
that's quite commendable. I've learned quite a bit about you. You're one heck of a guy. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going
Thank
on. Hats off to you, my friend. You got a lot going on. Now, you said you have boys. How many boys do you have?
I have 3 boys, yes, and 2 of them are still young and playing sports. The other one is already older. He's already on his own.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that. That's awesome. Very cool. Well,
That's great.
listen, thank you for coming on and with us and having this great conversation and giving us some awesome information from our referral partners. Really enjoyed learning some more, and I learned some new stuff. And I'm sure everyone watching has learned some new stuff too. Thank you very much, Brian. We'll really appreciate it.
No, thank you for the opportunity to provide the public with some answers to questions they may have and just give them information in general as to what they may experience working with home partners in a transaction for a closing.
Yeah, and Raul, keep doing a fantastic job leading the largest largest title company, I should say, in South Florida. Your team does an excellent job. We work together a lot.
Yep.
We simply appreciate all the support, and we know that you guys go the extra mile. We'll put contact information for you in the episode notes.
Okay.
But if anybody wants to get a hold of you, you want to tell them how to get a hold of you?
Sure. You could reach me at Molina, RMOLINA, at homepartnerstitle.com. You could send me an email there. You could call me at.
That's awesome.
Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too. Happy
All right,
Friday.
thanks. That was great, Raul.
All right. Sorry about the phone calls coming in there. I forgot to put the phones on silent.
Nah, it makes it real.
It makes it real, right?
Every podcast I've ever heard, there's some episode where suddenly you hear this dog in the background yipping. So yeah, no worries. Yeah.
I actually got a call
Awesome.
from Mike in the middle of.
Oh, good.
But, so,
Good stuff. Really appreciate it. And boy, you do have a lot going on. Did you coach baseball?
that's a lot.
Yeah.
Black belt.
Yeah. Right
That's
now I'm
awesome,
taking
dude.
a break from the coaching, but the boys are still in the sports. But I still have to, train them myself. It's like they get 2 times a week practice, but that's not really enough sometimes.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
sir.
All right.
Very cool.
We'll let
Have a
you
great
sign off.
weekend.
Thanks, bud.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah, we'll be there. All right, bye.
Oh, that was a great conversation.
Yeah, Raul really he's got a lot of talents. I didn't know he was I didn't know he had all those was into all that other stuff. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
What a super great guy. Anytime I've we work with a lot of different title companies, Craig, and we work primarily with Home Partners Title. They do a great job. And that guy, man, he's a really good dude. Like anytime I've emailed him, he calls me, within a pretty efficient manner and addresses any concerns and has really stepped up and helped buyers and helped get deals closed. And they've closed other deals. I mean, that other title companies did not close. He's a super great guy. And yeah, I have much respect for people like him who, have all that stuff going on in their life, a man of faith, everything. That's awesome.
He's hard to kill.
Yeah. I
I had to throw the Steven Seagal reference in
Of
there. I think I'm gonna
course.
get some mileage out of that.
Of course. Yeah. Well, you didn't say kung fu though or anything. So,
Yeah.
but it's all good. So I guess we'll talk about the rates thing. So we got the average Freddie Mac survey rate coming out just a hair below 6%. So the psychology of that is it's big in the news and everything.
Yep. I saw it on the front page of CNN and, it
Yeah.
was big headlines across the nation. Mortgage rates, dip below 6%.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. And then even this morning, we had an inflation report, a minor one
Yeah.
that came out, not the big daddy inflation report of the month,
Right.
but and inflation came out a little bit worse than expected, actually
Yeah.
worse than what expected. And the bond market is still doing better today this morning.
Yeah. I mean, it's just below 4, right? Isn't it just below 4 on the 10-year?
It is. Yeah. The 10-year treasury is just a hair below 4.
Yeah.
So that's good news. And and when you get negative news that comes out about inflation, and the bond market still is resilient, it's good. That's a good situation for
Yes.
the interest rate environment for people who are looking to buy or potentially refinance.
Yeah. No,
Good news.
that's a great point. So let's hope this, just stays like this, continues, and maybe rates get even better. So all good stuff. So,
Get it while it's hot.
yeah, well, it's hot. Exactly. If you haven't refinanced yet, you might want to consider it now. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Craig, listen to this. I'm wearing this shirt, that tomorrow is the Miami Dolphins Cancer Challenge. I've written in it, I don't know, I think 8 out of the last 9 years. And I'm writing in it. I'm doing the Dan Marino. I can always quote the Laces Out Dan Marino 13-mile ride. You're writing the Zach Taylor. Zach Thomas. Zach Thomas, confused with his brother-in-law, Jason Taylor. 54
That's right.
miles? 54 miles? Craig?
54 miles. Should be a nice day. We might get a little rain, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a great event, an amazing cause.
Yeah.
Everybody that we know has somebody in their life that's been affected by cancer.
This is an amazing event. This
it's
is
awesome.
very, it really is. It's very, very impactful for me. I lost both my parents to cancer. And so this is a very, very heartfelt event for me. I get emotional when I ride this event every year, and I really look forward to it. So
It's
yeah,
great.
it's going to be a great day tomorrow. And it's a wonderful event. I jokingly say it's like the only thing the Miami Dolphins do right is this event. But right, Craig? Because it's a first class event. I mean,
But the event is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear there's going to be 5,000 participants this year, which
Yeah.
is really an astonishing number. So
yeah.
you have all these people riding all these different miles, and then you've got a lot of people running or walking a 5K.
Yeah.
And then they have a huge celebration.
Blues Traveler,
Afterwards.
dude. Blues Traveler's playing.
Blues
from the
Travelers.
90s, man.
Well, they're fantastic. Yeah.
I know. So it's
it's
amazing. Amazing, man.
It's been a great event. Definitely. And I think this is what got me back into my fitness journey was getting involved with this event. 'Cause
Really?
I kind of fallen out of fitness for a while and had just been working and just let my fitness go. And then suddenly the company got involved in wanting to do this event. And I had a beach cruiser at the time.
Really? You rode a beach cruise the first year?
No, I that's what I started practicing on.
Okay.
I agreed to ride in the event 6 weeks away. The only thing I had was a beach cruiser. And so I pulled the beach cruiser out and rode 26 miles on my
Did
beach
you have
cruiser.
like the beach cruiser handlebars and the fat seat?
a real deal beach cruiser, man.
I miss those.
Yeah. It was a real beach cruiser. And so, yeah, I don't have it anymore, but ever since then, been riding and really enjoy it. And so, but this event is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing event. Miami Dolphins, it's called the DCC, Miami DCC. They close out on these roads. It's a huge, huge event. Me, the 13-mile, we start at the stadium. We ride through Miami Gardens area down to one of the airports down there, and we ride back. Yours, the 54. Where do you guys start?
We started the stadium also, and then I think we usually what we've done is we've gone down to like Miami Beach. We go
Okay.
south all the way to the beach, head up the beach all the way to Fort Lauderdale Beach, and then
Wow.
go back west on 84, and then come usually up Davie Road, go past the
Nova University and all that stuff?
Nova there.
Okay.
It's one of the stops, and then kind of head back up. And I think we head back down to the stadium on Douglas. So it's like you do a big loop around South Florida. It's pretty cool.
It is cool. Last year I did the 39-mile one, the Larry Zonka one, which started at UM, then it went through Coconut Grove, downtown Miami, over to South Beach, and up, and then back through like North Bay Village. It was awesome. It was really, really amazing ride. It was really cool. It really shows you how much the city of Miami has grown.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure.
Super cool. So, all right, dude. Well, hats off to us for doing this tomorrow.
Yep.
You have a great weekend, and we will see you. Besides tomorrow, we will see you
at the closing table.
All right, Craig. See you later.